Maloney.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order and have the clerk lead us in the pledges of allegiance.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Yes. Glad everybody found their parking spots out there. If I could have a motion and a second that the agenda for today's meeting, Tuesday, November 17th, be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. If I could have a approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. We have some special reports. Dr. Putnam.
Yeah, this evening we're going to start off with our special reports, and I'll ask Mr. Buddington and Dr. Maloney to come on up to the table, and we're going to hear from them on their secondary school action plans for Bay Trail and PHS. And then after we get done with that, we'll talk about classes under 15 for the board's review and discussion as well, which we do on an annual basis. And I will turn it over and have you guys introduce yourself and start.
I'm Dr. Maloney, the high school principal.
Winton Buddington, principal at Bay Trail. Thank you for the opportunity to share with the board and the community our action plans this year. For this year, I know you heard from our elementary colleagues a couple weeks ago, and our format kind of follows from a similar piece for them. So we're looking at our action plans for the 15-16 school year. And to start with kind of a summary of the 14-15 school year, the three areas that are common in the board goals about academic excellence, partnerships, and fiscal efficiency, being consistent over the past few years have really helped us to develop and make progress in these areas. One of the things for Bay Trail is that as part of our school improvement process, we've continued to follow the school to watch process, and we've recently, part of our work last year was applying for redesignation. We recently had our site visit, and I want to thank John and Tom for coming and talking to Dr. David Payton and Brian Sherman, who did our site visit last week. One of the things that they shared with me that really, to me, kind of relates to our school action plan is David Payton did our site visit 3 years ago, and he said, this is a different place than even 3 years ago. And so having the consistent goals and the consistent targets that we can work toward with academic excellence really helps make that progress. And our work last year really centered around the essential learning standards, the ensured focus on learning, common assessments, and different departments are in different places. Our partnerships with our parents and community, we developed new connections with the high school and the elementaries last year over transitions, and our fiscal work to stay fiscally responsible to the community really were the highlights for last year for Bay Trail.
From the high school perspective, we took some time and really dove into the pathways to graduation. If you'll recall, the pathways to graduation, previously students were required to pass 5 Regents exams in order to graduate. 1 English, 1 math, 1 science, and 2 social studies. The pathways allowed us to really take a look at some alternative options. And the beautiful thing was we were able to implement the pathways for last year's seniors. So we educated the staff, they're the experts, and then we implemented very targeted AIS to help students. With the new pathways, you replace those 2 social studies exams. Students need to pass 1 social studies, and then they can opt to take an additional science, an additional math. And so by using those pathways, we were able to help some of our students, last year's graduating seniors. There were a couple students actually that we were able to get through and get them through graduation. The Common Core, we're still plugging away with our transition to the Common Core. As you will recall, last year we implemented geometry, it was our geometry team really dove into the sessions in Albany, the NTI sessions, and the work at the state level, and their work really paid off. They had a 93% pass rate, and that was exceptional, particularly for a new exam. If you will recall, we also, in terms of English, we have, the English department decided to wait for implementation to do a soft rollout of the Common Core. So last year was implementation of English 10 Common Core, and this year's implementation of English 11 Common Core. Moving into that decision, other districts went the other direction, and we kind of went back and forth. I remember working with Tom on this, and looking back, the English department is so glad that they made the decision that they did, because what the time allowed was for exams to be given, and we took those exams, did analysis. We were also able to get data from BOCES on how other schools did that took those exams. So we really were able to have targeted instruction for that exam as opposed to trying to hit a moving target. In terms of our partnerships, as Winton mentioned, we are very proud of our partnership with Bay Trail, working on 8th grade transitions last year. We also, within the community, maintained some longstanding partnerships with Rich Eyed and the car giveaway. The YMCA, we have a wonderful relationship with the YMCA. Our LCCE students have, for a number of years, have taken advantage of the resources at the YMCA. This year, we've extended that partnership, and now our students that are on independent study for PE have memberships to the Y and are able to access the resources there. Our other partnership that we're proud of is SDM partnering with our student council, and it's a beautiful, the way that the structure is in the charter of the PHS SDM, it really sets it up nicely. The students, and Aubrey's one of them, the students that serve on SDM come from student council, so that naturally facilitates that relationship. And last year we worked on the Patriot Pride Week, as well as wrapping up the academic integrity policy. And the success of Patriot Pride Week has kind of grown and transitioned into some other events, which I'll talk about as we work through the slides. From a fiscal perspective, for a number of years, the high school has been working on electronic communications. Last year, we took time to really train the staff on some of the amazing capabilities of Infinite Campus, and really helped get more electronic communications out.
So as we move into the 15-16 school year and looking at our goals, Bay Trail, we work with the 4 essential questions of learning. What do we want students to know? How do we know if they know it? What do we do if they do? What do we do if they don't? And those really guide our focus for the academic goal. This work takes place in our grade level department meetings, in our department meetings, and it's looking at continuing to build those common assessments and having that alignment so that no matter which house a student's in at Bay Trail, no matter which teacher they have, they should have the same experience. And I wouldn't say we're 100% there. We're keep making progress with that each year as we focus on this, as that guaranteed and viable curriculum and our common assessments. The expectation we place on the staff is working on 3 common assessments a year. So because they take a lot of work to build the assessments, to analyze the data and make it part of our progress and process and integrate it into what we do. So it's a continual effort in those areas. The other goal that we added this year, nurturing the physical, social, emotional, and creative well-being of the students, tying into the whole child. There's a lot that happens at Bay Trail to support the social and emotional development of students in the middle school. Two of the areas for the Schools to Watch application are around social equity and developmental responsiveness. And that also guides and supports the things that we do with our caring community ambassadors, our asset kudos, our celebrations of character, the recognitions for students as they embody our motto of take care of yourself, take care of others, and take care of Bay Trail.
So for PHS, this first goal is about balance, maintaining that academic excellence while also supporting the whole child. The PHS School Action Plan was developed with the leadership team this summer during the Leadership Summit, and it really guides the work that the leadership team of department chairs and administrators, the work that they do throughout the year. As we discussed the school action plan at the summit, the leadership team, we kept coming back to a common theme, which was our current schedule, and does it maximize opportunities for students, and really that whole child approach in supporting students. So, as you know, at the high school, the core is the master schedule. So we, as a team, we have decided to take a slow approach and review our current schedule and take a look at other schedules and talk about what do we value in this current schedule, what would we like to see, what supports, what additions would we like to see. Does this require modification of our current schedule? Does it mean a new schedule? Typically, transitioning to a new schedule is a 3-year process. We're just in the initial phases, looking at how can we either tweak what we currently have, or do we move forward with implementing a full new schedule? In addition to taking a look at the master schedule, from an academic perspective, our 12-in-1 special education courses, they currently parallel our core courses. And the leadership team wants to strengthen the partnership between the 12-in-1 special education teachers and the general education teachers. And so this summer we talked about how could we do that. And last year, there was a relationship formed with the 12-in-1 English teacher and the English department. And so we really looked at what was successful in that partnership and how could we replicate that with across the other 4 cores. And what that's going to look like, and has already started to look like, is our 12-in-1 teachers being part of the common planning for the core teams. It required some creative scheduling, but we were able to make it work, as well as participating in grading of the Regents exams, curriculum sessions, really being a part of that team. The other piece, that, as I mentioned previously, that we're still working on implementing the Common Core, and this will be the first year for Algebra 2. And as you may have heard, some districts are going back and forth around implementing the Common Core, staying with the current standards. And the Penfield team, the Penfield Math Department, we are moving forward with the Common Core. We're staying the course, and we're excited about. In fact, one of the math teachers just posted something on Facebook around how exciting it is to see what her students can do after they've been in Common Core and the difference from a few years ago. In terms of English, this is the first year for English 11, and our students will be taking the English 11 Regents exam in June. So we're excited to see how our students perform and take a look at the exam. With regards to data-driven decision-making, the leadership team took a look at how we are recording Regents scores on students' transcripts. Currently, each time a student takes a Regents exam, the score is on the transcript. And the leadership team, the department chairs, really wanted to know, is this best from a college admissions perspective? What other options do we have? A lot of questions that we'd like to take a look at over the course of the year.
Winton, before you move on, I just want to clarify a statement that Dr. Maloney made with regards to our choices around implementing the Algebra 2 curriculum. All students will be required to take the Algebra 2 Regents exam. That's not going to be an option. Some districts were opting to try to teach both the old and the new, and then have students take both the old assessment and the new assessment. That's not something that we feel is best for students. So we're moving forward with doing our best to prepare students for the Common Core version of the exam, and then there will be an option for students to also take, if they so choose, the additional Regents assessment, the old Regents assessment. So I just don't want there to be any confusion with the public that we had a choice and we could have continued down the old path. That wasn't an option that we had. And then just to add on, one of the other challenges I've kind of been working with Dr. Maloney is in the future the way that we report those Regents scores on the transcripts, because there is some confusion when they're reported as a score out of 100. They're really not. That's a scale score as well. And so what we're talking about is maybe in the future moving toward looking at reporting the level, the 1 through 5 like we do for the AP courses, and that's a part of that conversation as well. So there's a lot of work going on that leadership team's doing at the high school in terms of how we report the grading. So just a couple points of clarification. Thank you.
So as we look at our collaborative partnerships, we can't do the work that we do and support that we provide to our students without our partnerships. And it's the partnerships with, not only with our colleagues at other levels, but with our parents and with the community. So in the Bay Trail Action Plan, we list out more of those partnerships, specifically with parents, the opportunities to come in and help out in the building, in our library and classrooms, be part of SDM, be part of PTA, and our PTA serves as a key partner for us with our communication, with our e-news, with the Trailblazer, and helping keep our parents informed about what's going on in the building and in the district. The partnerships with the high school and the elementary really revolve around the transitions, and how are we sharing the information about the students? We know students receive a lot of supports at the elementary level, both socially, emotionally, and academically. How do we communicate that so that we can continue those supports as they come to Bay Trail, and then as they transition on to the high school, how are we helping the high school look at those students? Each level provides different supports to students, and the students' needs evolve as they mature. So it's that conversation which is critical in providing that continual growth and support for the students. One of the areas that is a new partnership for us this year as we continue to work on our emergency response plans, and we're developing new partnerships with community groups that are part and will be involved in those plans. And we appreciate the collaboration we're experiencing from having conversations with those groups as well. It's not something that we necessarily like thinking about, but the more we're prepared, the better we are going to be able to respond. And we know that our community groups are integral in helping keep our students safe as well. So we're having some great conversations, and that's a new avenue of partnerships for us this year at Bay Trail.
So one of the partnerships that the team wanted to highlight is the partnership that we have between our shared decision-making team and our student council. As I mentioned a little earlier, we continue this partnership by working on various events to encourage positive school culture. For example, the Friday Morning Lights segment on Channel 13, it allowed us an opportunity for PHS to showcase many of our attributes which contribute to supporting the whole child, from athletics to robotics to music, unified basketball. Both students and staff were able to be showcased and highlighted, and it was a very positive experience for the entire school community. Student council provided input on the various segments which were showcased, as well as sponsored the grilled bagels that the students received who attended Friday Morning Lights. Much of the discussion at our SDM meeting following the Friday Morning Lights was on how do we continue this positive momentum and offer more all-encompassing events like the Friday Morning Lights segment. Working with the students from Student Council, discussions after homecoming and around Friday Morning Lights students shared the need to encourage students at the K-8 levels to identify as Penfield Patriots and to encourage that Patriot pride. So I believe Aubrey has shared with you, we're looking into purchasing a new mascot costume and coming up with ways to partner with the elementary and middle schools to encourage that Patriot pride K-12. Partnerships within PHS, we're looking at really fostering those interdisciplinary partnerships. We have a very successful interdisciplinary partnership between the English department and the social studies department and our paired courses. How could we foster this? And the leadership team of department chairs and administrators has decided to start by targeting our successes amongst some of the staff and their skills with technology. And so the team is working through our technology committee to take individuals' skills and encourage teachers to present workshops for other teachers during an upcoming superintendent's conference day. So it's a kind of a mini homegrown technology conference facilitated by teachers for teachers. And whether we'll be able to fit that in the January conference day or for next October, we still need to work that out. And then our partnerships within the Penfield community. We've identified a need for a central location to afford students the opportunity to investigate career options. Current career options as well as career options post graduation. Again, addressing the whole child. This career center would be a location for students to connect with current part-time job opportunities, get help completing working papers, coordinate work study, set up possible internships. Our counseling team is currently researching how other schools structure their career centers, but in the meantime, we have made some shifts with clerical staff to begin aligning many of these tasks with one specific individual. So that, the next slide is, sorry, I'm sorry.
Is me.
Is you. I thought we were to the questions,
Okay.
sorry.
As we look at our fiscal responsibility and operations, it's continuing our work. And one of the things at Bay Trail, we look at the students grow and we get new students coming in each year. Those needs change. And how do we continue to utilize the staff that we have in the ways that's effective to meet the needs of the students? So that process involves analyzing the data, looking at our groupings of students, and that changes each year. It evolves a little bit each year based on the needs of the students that we have in the building at that time. We continue to work with our budgets and our departments on the efficiencies with purchasing of their materials and supplies. And then the collaboration with other district administrators, not only about staffing, but also this involves, Mr. Hirschler and I have been meeting about facilities and how could we share space? What could that look like that might be more efficient for the district in space needs? So it's continuing to look at the resources we have and how do we continue to use them in creative ways, not only the facilities, but our staffing to really meet the needs of our students as effectively as we can.
So again, when the leadership team at the high school sat down to take a look at goal number 3, some areas that we wanted to target in terms of our focus were taking a look at our computer lab usage and maximizing the physical space of the computer labs. Right now we have a number of laptop carts, and we also have a number of physical labs. And are staff maximizing the current computer labs? Is there a better use for the physical space that would provide students with more targeted supports? So lots of great questions that the team brought up, and they'd like to take some time to really dig in on this. The team is also planning a review of our textbook distribution and collection process. They believe this is a way that we could hone in and really find some ways to save some money. We end up looking for textbooks all over the place. We find textbooks, we purchase replacement texts, and the team has some ideas on how we could strategize that process. And then this is the third year that PHS has been committed to electronic communications, and the team would like to take a look at and assess the efficacy of these electronic communications and what's needed to go to the next level. Do staff need more training? Are there currently print communications that could transition to electronic communications? What direction can we go next in terms of electronic communications? So now we have the questions slide. My apologies. I was just anxious to thank you all for your support from both Winton and I and our teams at the secondary levels.
Thank you very much. Board members, questions? Yes, Lisa.
And I'm not sure who this is for, but now I got confused when you started talking about the 2 math regions. So students are able to take either or both? They can get a score on both, or how's that going to work?
So students have to take the Common Core Aligned Regents exam for Algebra 2. And then there will be an opportunity for them to also take the old exam. But as we know, those curricula are not perfectly well aligned. There's been a change. There's been a shift in the standards, and therefore the curriculum has changed. And as we talked about it, as Leslie led the conversations with Nicole with the math department, it was a conversation of what can we do to best meet students' needs and prepare them for success. And given the shifts in that curriculum, we didn't feel there was enough time in a single year for students to be taught both. And so our focus is the Common Core standards, the Common Core learning standards for Algebra 2. And then after that exam is taken, students would then have the opportunity to also take the old exam, the old Regents exam. The higher of the 2 scores will count. It's similar, this same process was rolled out with algebra and geometry, and now will also be true for Algebra 2. And I believe there's still discussion around what they've decided to do with the English 11 exam. So we're still waiting for final word on that and how that's going to work. They're leaning toward a similar process to give the option to give both exams. And then count the higher of the 2, both for the student score as well as for any APPR purposes.
Is that just 1 year they do that?
Yes.
Okay.
First year of administration.
Yes, Mark.
Dr. Maloney, you were talking about the master schedule, and can you just sort of elaborate on what is encompassed by the master schedule when you're looking at revising that, and also what kinds of things would dictate whether you make a refinement to the existing one versus revamping and starting with a new one?
So I'll start from one of the pieces that we value within the current schedule are the number of electives that we're able to offer. So that's something that we would like to hold on to. Something that we are looking to modify and provide more are RTI supports and interventions, and RTI for all. We currently have the Academic Support Center, but are there ways within the master schedule that we could provide RTI opportunities for all students, similar to how the elementaries offer RTI across the board? So those are just some of the, and we're also, currently we're piloting some kind of out-of-the-box, you may have seen the Flyers Come Home. We're currently offering hybrid health after school. We're piloting that. And it's actually turned out to be a very successful program. So what other options could we offer in kind of an out-of-the-box way?
Yes.
I guess this is more of a comment versus a question. Knowing that the whole child is an integral part of our goals and for the district, and hearing Winton say that at Bay Trail they have to deal with, they're also working in collaboration with the elementary school as well as moving on to the high school and Dr. Maloney. To me, that encompasses the whole child, that you truly are that bridge between the early years and then moving forward. And I like how you said, or how you put it, that we take the information from where they were and get them ready to go where they're going to be. I really, really like that. Thank you.
Thank you. It's the joy of middle school.
Yes, Camille?
I had a question about something when you mentioned that with the School to Watch program, one of the items in that program is social equity. And I'm wondering what that looks like. Is that taken care of, taught in one curriculum area? Is it across the areas? And then I'm curious if that's also something as part of the high school program.
As we look at social equity from the Schools to Watch point of view, it's looking at, do we have equal opportunities for all students? Or the idea is that with middle school students mature at different rates, so if we have enrichment opportunities, are they open to all students? Do we have different entry points so that students aren't locked out of opportunities just because they weren't ready for it at a certain time? That it's in how do you support the social development of students as they experience the middle school, the adolescence moving into teens, even with social media. So some of those things are in courses like the personal development class and the health classes that our counselors and our health teachers do. It's part of our asset kudos and celebrations of character. Those developmental things are part of it. The beginning of the year, we do lessons for students on common expectations across the building for buses. And so it's all of those things come together, and how is that looked at for every kid in the building and not just certain targeted groups.
Any other questions? Dr. Putnam, did you have anything you wanted to add?
They just, this is for the board's memory too. So we did elementary schools last meeting, and then high school and middle school now. And just now that we've seen all 6 principals speak, it's amazing that you're able to compress all that you do into a 30-minute presentation and just highlight a couple of those pieces, because we obviously know what you reported on is maybe a tenth of what your school year is looking like. And I also just want to point out, and you're able to do it more at the secondary level because you have assistant principals. You both mentioned throughout your teams and how this is not just the principal, but the team and the leadership team that you're working with. And then I got to meet this morning with all the other area superintendents, with Senate Majority Leader Flanagan and all the other senators together at a convention across multiple counties downtown, and listening to all the changes that they're talking about from the state and from SED. Being there this morning and here this evening, just wanted to make a comment about how you're both able to stay so positive, you're able to smile, you're able to be here for kids, which is what we're all about, and be true to Penfield, even though the state and SED like to change the game on us here and there. And ultimately, your leadership in the buildings hopefully continues to keep that away from the teachers and ultimately the students, and we deal with it as we move forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd like to just, final comment, I really enjoyed meeting with the School to Watch people. It was very intellectual conversation and really a greater understanding of what this program is and how hard it is to be in this group. So I think that was really great. And I do love the idea of the Career Center. Again, looking at the real-world perspective of what's out there earlier than college, because I think we see our colleges trying to do that as well. So I think that's a great idea as well. So thanks again for coming tonight and doing everything you do for us.
And they're not leaving that fast because they have another presentation right now.
I'm
Hey.
going to
Well, hang around.
jump on board with a final comment and just thank the board for their support and their patience. You recall that really last year was the first year of the whole student focus within goal number 1, and I know that we're still evolving in our manner of being explicit about our efforts in our buildings with regard to the whole student. We have conversations in many different platforms and areas with many different stakeholder groups. What we don't do in those conversations, though, is say, okay, now we're going to talk about the whole student. We talk about the endeavors and the initiatives that we're doing that fall under the umbrella of the whole student, and the sense that I have now and the understanding that I have now and that I'll be working with our administrators on as future forward through the course of our action plans, being more explicit about that. Because as the board has said many, many times, we know that our schools are doing a lot. We want to clearly communicate that better. So we'll continue in that regard as we move forward with our action plans for next year, and also as we have those conversations moving forward. So I appreciate the patience, the direction, and the support, and we'll continue to work together to make sure that we're showcasing all that we are doing to develop the whole student, along with achieve that #1 goal of academic achievement and excellence. So thank you. Moving on. As you know, annually we want to take a look at our classes that have lower enrollment, specifically less than 15 students enrolled. And I want to reference that briefly with just a reference back to the goals, assumptions, and guidelines that we look at as part of the budget development process annually that talk about classroom staffing levels and the board reviewing classes that have less than 15 students enrolled in them. And that's where this direction comes from. So we'll start with the high school and take a look at some courses classes that are currently running with less than 15 students. And the way that these are arranged, they're grouped. We're starting with our LOT classes. And you'll note that there are some classes that are the same. For example, German 2R that have 13 students in each of 2 periods. So a total, we have 26 students enrolled in the course. We're running 2 sections. And why might we run 2 sections when we only have 26 kids enrolled? I think a lot of this you'll see is going to be a repetition around flexibility for the students. If we limit them to 1 class, then if the students have another course that they need to take, and that is only also offered during that same period, we're restricting that flexibility around maybe those electives or maybe even sometimes graduation requirements for some of our students. So the more flexibility we have around this, the more we can offer for our students and then meet the needs of our kiddos as they're finishing up their careers with us. So those are our LOT classes, and we see down there also you'll see our Latin sections. We know that our Latin numbers have been low, and we continue to look at that. Certainly in a situation like that, we can have conversation around potentially combining those courses. However, when we get to talking about different levels of a foreign language class, the one great challenge that we'll have is the type of instructions that is required at each level. So certainly we can have a conversation about that, but we need to fully understand what that would require on the part of the teacher, and then also any resulting staffing impact of doing so as well. Moving on, we have our forensic science courses, some of our STEAM courses listed here. You'll note that our Algebra 2 extended courses, that's the course that is kind of an RTI type model wherein our students have an extra period on a regular basis scheduled in that give them some extra time to master those standards and prepare them for success. And in doing so, it's advantageous again to schedule that in a slightly smaller group and again provide that flexibility, noting that across the 2 classes we do have 26 students enrolled. And then we have one of our technology classes here, and particularly of low enrollment, what you'll see though is that we have 7, 1, 4, and another one of 1, but note that the period is the same. This is an example of where we have combined courses of a different level into 1 period in 1 class, and the teacher is differentiating. And also to note that technology course, the TV production, that's our morning announcements at the high school. So that's our small group of students who are learning how to really work in the media field and are producing the morning announcements on a regular basis, on a daily basis, really. And again, also with the game design and advanced game design, similar piece where we have a student who's at a more advanced level. He's scheduled in the same class as the students who are in the regular version of the course, but doing a differentiated level of work. And then we have some of our art courses, again, still in the STEAM theory, or the STEAM frame here. So certainly, when we look, we see if we look across a course, our enrollments in many places are above 20 or above 15, but we have class sections that are at 15 to improve that flexibility for our students in scheduling. And we'll move on to Bay Trail. Again, music sections and our art sections are special areas. Again, a lot of this is when we're at Bay Trail is we're trying to schedule students into the other supports that they need for their core academic areas, sometimes in order to then get them their other subjects and their experiences in the arts that they need. It's resulting in occasionally in these lower size classes. And in other cases, it may be special education sections of those classes as well. Again, similar to the math extended course that we saw at the high school, we have similar opportunities for students in math scheduling at Bay Trail as well. And what you see here is these are the core courses. They're labeled as RTI because of the way that they're scheduled. So when you see an RTI-S, that means that course, typically at Bay Trail, a core course would meet 2 out of every 3 days. If it says RTI, that core course is meeting 3 out of 3 days. And if you see an S, that means it's supported with additional adult support in the classroom. So those are some of our neediest students, and we're working to try and support them as much as we can through the scheduling process and with additional adult support and additional time. And we have our LOC classes, our World of Language classes. Again, scheduling is very different at the middle school level, especially in 6th grade. There isn't as much flexibility in what we can do with what students need. There are a lot of requirements and not as many electives, and so it's sometimes difficult to get this into the student schedule, and as a result, again, it sometimes results in slightly lower class sizes. And then certainly these are our scheduled enrichment opportunities, as Winton talked about. There are many opportunities that they're not officially scheduled as an enrichment class, where it's a more open format where students can come in and out based on interest and performance throughout the year, to have that more open opportunity that aligns with the board policy that was adopted in 2014.
Jim, just on that other slide too, with the 6th grade World of Language classes, this 6th grade group is it's the group of 300 students. So it's our dip that's now moving through Bay Trail. So some of those lower numbers, we reduced a couple sections, but it still resulted in lower numbers. So as that next population comes back up, we'll see that dip kind of move through 7th grade next year and 8th grade with this population of 300 kids.
And then finally, our English as a new language. You'll see that our numbers are reasonably low. We don't have a high population of English as a new language students in the middle school. However, because of the requirements of having to provide integrated co-teaching for those students, and we have sections right now, the process that we're going through with the middle school, similarly at the elementary schools and at the high school, is scheduling our NL students together. So in 6th grade, all of the incoming NL students were scheduled into the same core classes so that we could maximize staffing and provide the required support. What we didn't want to do was undo the house system and the team system for those students in 7th and 8th grade at this point. So we didn't combine them into the single house yet. But as this class moves through and future forward, all NL students will be scheduled into the same house so that we can maximize staffing. And at this point, we are using BOCES staff to support these students at the middle school level. 2.5 BOCES staff members are helping us. That's the rundown of the list, and in your board packets you were provided with some more rationale specific to each of the courses. But at this time, if you have any questions for me or for Winton or Leslie, we're happy to answer those, and also take feedback from the board regarding the classes that are being run with less than 15 students.
Questions, board members? Lisa?
I should probably know the answer to this, but what is our average kind of class size for secondary schools? And then there's a max, right? Like a contract max, or I know I should know the answer to that,
The
but
contract max typically is 30
oh, that high.
for
yes.
our high school classes.
Okay.
Yep. And then where we run into issues or questions is around science, because the cap is 30, but we typically have 24 chairs in a room, and we attempt to our very best to keep those small. And when I say we, I mean Leslie now, but apologize for jumping in there, but I've done it for a while, so.
No, I was just curious, like
Yep.
because some of these sections, if you're adding the two together, you're at 26, 27, which is probably pretty.
Then we start to push the envelope the other way.
Right.
The other, and Jim had mentioned it, and I think Leslie would know as well, is that especially at the secondary level, there are students that move in and out of the district. So a class like German 2R, which is a requirement if you're going to get your sequence in German, if we have 29 students in a class and 2 students move in who want to take German, we would have to say no. And that's a difficult thing that we have been in before around living environment, having to tell a student that we don't have any room in living environment and they'll have to wait a year. We don't like to do that, so we do our best. And then even those numbers don't show any drops that may have taken place or movement out. So when you hit that that magic number, you start to look at, you could have 2 sections instead of 1. We do that, especially around staffing for German, because if one of those wasn't there, we only have 1 German teacher at the high school. So if we said, hey, we're going to put you in the same class, we now no longer need a 1.0 German teacher, we need a 0.8 German teacher. Most teachers aren't going to stay for a 0.8 position when they've been living on a 1.0 salary. They'll look elsewhere for a job, and finding LOT teachers, everybody wants them, and there's not many of them out there. So those are the real-world discussions we've always had, and Winton touched upon it around that smaller class that's currently in 6th grade. To be very open, do we lay everybody off? Do we lay off a few people and then have to hire them back the next year when 6th grade is back up to a number that's more in line with the rest of our class numbers? So.
And I think also a point that was brought up by a board member at the last meeting was around, student changing their course enrollments after the year gets underway. That has the potential to have an impact both ways. It could potentially increase if they shift into a class that was at 15 or 16 and they move, 2 students move into a class that was at 20. Now all of a sudden we may have another class that's at under 15 that we didn't anticipate, but it could just as easily happen the other way. Students in a class of 23, 24 see, oh wow, that I'm hearing from my friends that there's 15 kids in that class or 14 kids in that class, and it's a great class. I want to take that instead, and now all of a sudden that's no longer on the list of under 15. So there can be those shifts either way as well with our courses that are running with those slightly lower numbers. But I think that the board has supported in my time here that I've noted is that flexibility and those opportunities for students, and this gives us the flexibility to do that.
Carol?
How do you decide the importance of, how you're gonna push the advanced classes in languages? I'm guessing we don't have German honors, right, or AP, do we?
No.
No, but we do have French honors, and which is also SUPA. And then from the questions I asked in the board packet, students can take the AP, but then we don't have Spanish SUPA, am I correct?
No, we don't have Spanish.
Okay, so how are those decisions taken? Like,
Within the LOT department, they have made the decisions over the course of the last few years in terms of which directions they would like to go with the advanced courses. Sometimes the decision is made around the curriculum and the support that SUPA provides. AP exams, students can always take, any student can take an AP exam. So you'll see in our AP data, sometimes there are years when students elect to take the AP German and the AP or the AP French. We also are engaging in a partnership with MCC and offering MCC credits at the level 4 in Spanish, German, and French. Currently this year it's offered in French, and we're looking to expand that. So the department, it's really a department discussion, and then they come and advocate to Tom in the past and to myself now in terms of what direction the department wants to go.
I think it's also important to note that participation on those exams is often guided by whether or not that credit will be accepted by the college or university that the student's going to be attending. Often these are our seniors who may have already been accepted to college, and so if their college or university won't necessarily accept the credit for that exam, or sometimes they only accept it if the student performance is at the highest level, sometimes the students won't then take the exam. They take the rigorous coursework, but they don't always take the assessment at the end.
okay. So if we were to look at our low numbers in Latin classes, so it would be like a department discussion then, considering how the Latin program has evolved in Penfield and we don't offer it in Bay Trail, so no surprise the low numbers we have at the high school now. So it would be like the department who will think about it and decide what they want to do, or I'm just trying to understand the process.
In terms of in terms of offering an entire course sequence like Latin, that would be a conversation that would take place first with the buildings during our budget process, because that would be potentially a cut. And that would be a discussion that would start at Extended Senior Cabinet, which will be meeting in January with the principals, and then I would be bringing it to the board to have a conversation on the direction the board would like to go. because that's different than not offering a single class. Like, you know, if we're going to say we're no longer going to offer, I'm going to make this up, so don't hold me to it, but French honors, and we're only going to focus on regents, that would be more of a internal conversation because it may not impact staffing. And we've had to do that in the past with German, with only one German teacher. There were years in the past where German numbers were very large, and we, with board permission, actually paid the German teacher as a 1.2 because you can't find a 0.2 German teacher. Numbers have shifted now, and so it's a 1.0 German teacher is what we need. But the question, if it was around focus on Latin or French or German where the numbers are smaller, it would be a conversation that would trickle up to the board for conversation before we cut a program or reduce the program.
Okay. Will you indulge me with one more question?
That's, yes.
One more.
One more.
Not everybody else has to have a turn. It's our policy.
Last one, but still about foreign languages, trying to understand the process. How do you decide, for example, to go with SUPA French with Syracuse University, but then we also decide to go with MCC rather than the U of R, for dual credits, or RIT, or Nazareth Fisher? How do you decide which college to go with?
You want me to, you all right?
Well-
This started under my watch, and then
That's-
Leslie got to adopt it. So MCC approached us. MCC was very interested in partnering with Penfield because Penfield's typical Regents curriculum surpasses MCC's 100 and 101 level courses. So it really was a partnership that started. They came and met with the department and the principal, which was myself at the time, and the assistant principal in charge of LOTE, Charlie Rudes. We had a conversation, and we sort of said, this isn't right for us right now. We appreciate it, but we molded around, and a few teachers came forward and said, you know what, I thought about it, and I think I want to get them back in here. We brought them back in, and it was a lot of conversations to go that route, but MCC made it very easy, because what they basically said was, you don't need to change anything. Your course is already beyond where at or beyond where our class is. And so it was a very easy partnership. And we didn't seek elsewhere there. We focused on MCC for that easier credit for our students to have one more sort of feather in their cap if they wanted to take that route. And then to address the question that sort of came out is, some of it's AP, some of it's SUPA. We do allow that and have allowed that to be a little bit of a department decision. To be a SUPA teacher, you have to go away for a week in the summer, and it's a very long training. To be an AP teacher, it's a shorter training. Same rigorous, but you really have to have that buy-in from the teacher. So we've had conversations, but we've never said, you will teach SUPA instead of AP, because it's a big time commitment on the teacher, and without that buy-in, it's not there. So you'll see the low areas that went with SUPA was really because the teacher was very in support of doing the SUPA training and becoming an adjunct professor at Syracuse University. But we have not forced that on anybody because we realize that doesn't, then the buy-in's not there, and that trickles down.
No, and I appreciate that we're not forcing people.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Mark?
Yeah, I think Carol raises an interesting point, and it's not just with language, but for any of these, what really drives this, and what I'm saying is it what you offer for when it's time for enrollment, or what people sign up for that drives how many classes or what classes we offer?
It's kind of like, which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Right. So are we deciding what the students want, or the students telling us what what they want as a community?
And each year, we work with the departments to review the course guide and review the options, particularly if there are courses with low numbers or courses that didn't run because of low numbers, and take a look at the course offerings and talk about, are there other opportunities that we could be providing students? Are there other courses? Should we look at dual credit options? Should we work on developing electives? So a lot of it is driven by the student requests and what direction the students want to go.
One of the pieces that's interesting, as I didn't even think about until we sat here, is the number of courses more at the high school level, because at Bay Trail there are requirements. They don't have as much choice as the high school student does. But the number of courses that are offered in the course description guide, students have the ability to sign up for and then never see the light of day because the numbers are below 15 right to begin with. And when you drop one of those classes, and let's say there was 11 kids, 11 students in that class, those 11 students would trickle into some other classes. So you can't in May say we're not going to run any classes under 15 in May, because if all those classes get cut, those students need to go somewhere else, and there's no room in the inn for other classes. But that would be an interesting conversation to have next year, later this year, is to say what are keeping track of the classes that we don't run, because there are many of them. And the one that I've talked with Eric Brewer and technology a lot around is green technologies. It's a wonderful course. It's a great idea. It's written as a course description, and it hasn't run. Students don't sign up for it. And so we can want the best. I mean, green technologies is great. It's where we're heading to, sustainability. There's careers there. But if the students aren't there yet, we can't run the class. And so it's an interesting concept. And again, it's kudos to the board who has continued to focus on the whole student. And if you take a look at our course description guide from the high school, it's over 90 pages of courses that students can take. And there's ebbs and flows of a course that is really popular and then isn't as popular, and a new course comes into play. And that's kind of fun because it's the ever-evolving high school, and that's the fun at the secondary level, I think, more so than at the elementary level where there's no student choice. So, Catherine.
What you had just said brought a question to mind. It's a quick question.
Oh, man, it's not my fault.
Sorry. When a student signs up for a class, especially an elective, are they aware ahead of time that if there's not enough students to take the course, that the course is going? They do.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, just in just
the
for
counselors
fairness
meet
and-
with all the students,
Okay.
and those classes that are known to typically be smaller, there are those conversations. And if they can't run, the counselors that Leslie oversees, they get in touch with all the students in person, have the conversation, sit back down again, which is why, believe it or not, the course selection for next school year is going to begin next month, in December,
Yep.
I think.
The
So-
guide will be released on December 7th, so.
Oh, wow.
And that's
Almost
why the process has to start so early,
Yeah.
so we can have that schedule ready.
there. Okay, thank you.
Ask one.
Go ahead.
So with that, what drives us having this review at this point in time? And is there a better time to have this review? I mean, is there something that drives us to have it this time of year?
Sure. Well, we talked about it in agenda setting with John and Catherine and I in terms of when is the best time to have this review. And so we're always open from the board. If you'd like, if you feel it fits in a different spot, that's great. It would have to be, in my opinion, it would have to be, couldn't be right in the beginning of the school year because the numbers are going to change. And it can't really be in June because we haven't finalized anything. So the schedule for students gets finalized by the end of August. And so it could be shortly after that, but in September is where you see the flux in students moving in and out and sort of finalizing with their schedule. The high school has, for years now, had a pretty strict policy about no dropping a class for the first 2 weeks. There were years ago that when you came to the high school, it looked like a college drop ad line, which I just dated myself because I bet you it's all online now. But when I was in school, you had to go to the big gym at Cortland and wait in line to drop an ad. And what we tend to find at high schools, that was chaos for our class sizes. It was chaos for teachers, and it became, unfortunately, who you wanted to have lunch with, so you wanted to make your schedule look perfect. And so there's no changes for 2 weeks, and then it's really just instructionally sound choices, and that's kudos to the administrators and the counselors who work with students on really that best piece. The other thing you always saw with seniors is junior year, they sign up for a really rigorous course guide, and then they become seniors, and they want to take nothing but basket weaving. And as somebody who did take basket weaving, we want to avoid that. We want to keep them on a rigorous path and really sort of guide them through that end of their high school year.
If I
But-
could, the other reason that it ends up at this point in the schedule, sorry, just to weigh in, is as part of the budget process looking forward, not to this year, because as everyone's so ably pointed out, there's going to be lots of changes during the course of this year. You know, this is a moving target. But as you look forward to next year, if the board's interest was in elimination of a program, that's a budget conversation, and has historically seemed to be the time that conversation begins or starts to be considered, not for this year because it's too late, but for next year.
That sort of goes back to the first slide Jim showed around the
Correct.
guidelines, assumptions, and goals in terms of part of it is the budgeting conversation. Thanks for adding that, Mark.
Can I just make one comment to our community? Our help in this process is really encouraging our parents and students, if they have questions about their choices, to ask and get educated about what the options are. At the middle school, it's really around music choices and sixth graders choosing language. It gets more as we transition our eighth graders to high school, and those course selections are in January. But the more we have that accurate information for what students want when they make those selections, that really helps us with the planning and the scheduling and being fiscally responsible. When we have the changes and the drop ads, that's where we run into struggles. So the more students can get informed about what courses you want to take and get your questions answered ahead of time, we appreciate it.
Great, thank you. One last comment.
Last comment, I want to go back to the dual credit. I would like to know that when we're looking at having a dual credit with a college, that we're looking at dual credits that are going to be accepted in a lot of colleges. And I think Syracuse University is a perfect example. They are accepted in a lot of colleges, as opposed to other colleges where, a student think they're getting a dual credit, but then once they get to college, they realize that, okay, I took this class, which was supposed to be harder, and dual credit, but I'm not getting anything for it. So I would urge you to take that into consideration also when choosing whatever college we're trying to partner with. So that would be important.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The MCC course is automatically acceptable in any of the SUNY system. So that's the number one reason we went with MCC. And SUPA, we've actually found that many colleges don't accept SUPA right off the gate because it's a Syracuse University class. What we have found that the higher end colleges don't always accept it. What we have found from our students is when they resubmit their paperwork after their freshman year, it's accepted, and which is interesting. But they sort of, for some of our higher level colleges or more sort of Ivy League type colleges, they want to make sure you sort of prove yourself in their college system first, is what we've seen. And SUPA's been very helpful with that in regards to supporting students to get the credit that they deserve. But MCC going right into SUNY with an automatic guarantee has been really helpful.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming and joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, we're under visitor speaking time on our agenda, and we have a familiar face that would like to come up and visit with us. Krista Knapp from SEPTA. Welcome again.
Thank you.
Nice to have you back.
Nice to be back, although it doesn't seem like it's been a year, but it has. So I am here to do my official invite. So you are all formally and officially invited to the SEPTA Book Fair, which is December 5th. Barnes & Noble will be there from about 9 a.m. till probably 9 p.m. The community is invited as well. I'm going to highlight what's new this year. We're going to have Ms. Sponholtz from Harris Hill do some yoga with our kiddos. Our pet therapy teams are coming back. We've got music also coming back from Harris Hill, Indian Landing, and Bay Trail. New this year as far as music is Mr. Seaman is bringing the Indian Landing Singers. So I've been bugging for years to have them come, so they're finally coming. So we're very excited about that. We've added art therapy this year. We've also kind of changed up how we did the Legos, or we're going to do the Legos. So Jim, you're off the hook.
Apparently, my Lego skills over the last 2 years have not evolved enough to be the focal point anymore.
So you could still participate if you'd like. We're going to have a master Lego builder come in, and there's still discussion over what this person's actually going to build, and then we're going to auction the item off afterwards. Let's see, we've got music coming from the high school. We've got Jumbo Shrimp coming. Our Cobble's Fiddle Group is coming again. So again, we have the elementary principals coming and reading to their students. Our friendly little competition, which Harris Hill has maintained their leadership in, and maybe this year it'll be shaken up a little bit. What I do kind of want to highlight, last year we started a poster contest for National Inclusive Schools Week, which typically is the same week as Book Fair. This year it's actually the week right afterwards. So what we tasked students to do was to come up with a poster that represented the theme last year for National Inclusive Schools Week. Students did posters, and then at the event, we had participants and customers just randomly vote on the posters. So what we did was we came up with the winning poster from last year is now on our flyer for this year. So I will pass this around. And our winner this last year was Jamison Case, and he is a student at Cobbles. So we're going to do the same thing this year. And encourage students to create posters. We'll hang them up at Barnes & Noble, and everybody that comes can vote on what they think the winning entry should be, and that'll be a part of our artwork for next year. Trying to think if I missed anything. Cheesecake orders are due on Friday. If anybody wants to order a cheesecake, go to our website. Penfield-SEPTA.org. The flyers are there, the cheesecake order forms are there, the poster contest flyer will be there, and we're in the process of getting everything out into backpacks, at least at the elementary level. At the upper levels, kids don't take stuff home, so we're doing our best to advertise. So again, you guys are all invited. The funds, if you're not familiar, do go to purchasing books to all of the Penfield school libraries, books dealing with topics about special education or various disabilities. And we also fund Penfield High School scholarships.
Okay.
Questions, comments?
Well, thank you. This is an outstanding event, and I mean, it's great to see the changes that are ongoing, and I enjoyed the dogs last year, too, in particular. It was just amazing. So everybody mark your calendars, whether you're watching online or streaming, December 5th, Barnes & Noble Webster, and thanks for all that you do for SEPTA.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's a labor of love for us, and it's nice because it really is a school community event for us.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Aubrey, how about an update?
Hello. So our Penfield boys varsity volleyball team made it to sectional finals, and although they didn't win, the student section kept it very classy as we all wore shirts and ties. Also, 5 Penfield swimmers are going to states in Ithaca this Saturday to help represent Section 5. And last Thursday was signing day for athletes, and there were 11 or 12 athletes who signed, and the sports were lacrosse, basketball, and then there was 1 runner. And then for sports, winter sports started last Monday, so we're going into the swing of that. And last week and this week, the Penfield, we've been running a food drive at Penfield for the Penfield Ecumenical Food Shelf, and they're collecting non-perishable items for Thanksgiving. And then Penfield's Drama Club is putting on It's a Wonderful Life, and it premieres this Thursday at 7. And it's also playing Friday at 7 and Saturday. And the tickets are $8 at the door. And if you want like a front row ticket, you go to brownpapertickets.com. And then this Friday is the Penfield Webster faculty hockey game at 6. It's annual, and it's at the Webster Ice Arena, and all proceeds go to charity. And lastly, I might have mentioned this before, but this year in order to get pictures in the yearbook, there's the app called Replay It. So, because now with all our smartphones, most of the kids have the pictures from all the events. So kids are allowed to post those pictures onto the app, and then the yearbook club will go through them. So that way we have more range of pictures this year. So.
Great. Any questions for Aubrey? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Dr. Putnam.
All right. So our reports this evening, I just have a few staff and student honors, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Sansucci, who will go over our enrollment report and a final look at the goals, assumption, and guidelines. We had a great event last week. We had 8 PHS seniors who were inducted into the National Honor Society at the fall induction ceremony. And just as we have Dr. Maloney here, just wanted to say please send kudos back. I was there. I know Mr. Piper was there as well, and it was a really nice event, followed by a little breakfast in A1, which was great. So congratulations to all of our students who were now in NHS. We have with us tonight, which I didn't know she was going to be here, but I'm very happy she is the high school assistant principal, Terry Febri, was recently inducted into the Wayne Central Schools Athletic Hall of Fame. Terry is the first woman to be inducted. Her athletic honors include being named captain of the first U.S. women's select soccer team, and congratulations, Terry. And it's also, round of applause. It was also a really good reason to get out of homecoming. So I know that's why you did it, but that's congratulations. That's great. Everybody wants to be at homecoming is a question. Who doesn't want to be? Everybody wants to be at homecoming, but being a high school administrator at homecoming, you are also working the event. So, but it was a great event. Model UN, our Model UN competition had a very successful showing at the recent Hilton conference, and we had students win Best New Delegate, Honorable Mentions, Outstanding Delegate, and Best Delegate across the board. And then what is really interesting and exciting is Penfield also won the award for Best Small Delegation. So congratulations to the entire team, and our Penfield Model UN has continued to grow and continue to do really great at these local and statewide competitions. Very, very exciting. This one as well is really exciting, and that is PHS junior Hannah Sepula, who earned a perfect score of 36 on the ACT exam. Nationally on average, and I love this, nationally on average, less than 1/10 of 1% of students who take the ACT exam earn a perfect score. So congratulations to Hannah. Just very, very great. So I won't tell you what my ACT score was. So. And also today is School-Related Professionals Day, so just wanted to give a kudos to all of our school-related professionals, and this is a long list of folks, but it's really a lot of the support staff that are here that make the school happen, as well as our speech pathologists and psychologists and counselors. They also fall under faculty here, but they are also school-related professionals, our teaching assistants, our nurses, our clerical support. I will surely leave people out, but the entire group, custodians, and so just an amazing group of people. We talk about Team Penfield a lot and trying to continue to work towards being a real team, and that always takes a lot of work. And part of this is a great example of if one group wasn't there, could the school still run? And there's not a single group, both as school-related professionals as a whole or any of the individual groups within it, that school continues to run without their presence. And that's, to me, is one of those definitions of a team, is to be a real team member, you need everybody. And our students benefit from that greatly. So again, just on behalf of the district and the board, a great thank you. And I will turn it over to Mark.
Thank you. The next 2 items on your agenda are review of enrollment projections and a second look. You had a first look at the last board meeting of our goals, assumptions, and guidelines. So at the first meeting in November, you took a look at budget calendar and you reviewed these goals. Tonight we'll take a look at projections and finalize those for the budget. Those goals for the budget process. Next meeting will be tax cap update and also an update on the building condition survey. And then we really, in January, will begin to roll into the budget process itself. So with regard to the enrollment projections, the first thing we always look at, you have a much more comprehensive document in your packet, but the first thing we always look at is how do we do? I mean, we do this every year, so let's take a look at how last year's projection worked. And you have it by grade level. You have lots and lots of additional information, but this sort of summarizes the key points. So in 14-15, so our actual enrollment as of Beds Day, we kind of peg it around that first week in October for Beds Day. The enrollment was 4,422. Last year, at this time, we projected that for this year we'd enroll 4,409. So if you remember, we were projecting just a very slight decrease. Our enrollments have been declining for the past number of years, and last year I think I said, and they seem to be flattening out. And next year we're looking about the same, but still a little bit down. Well, in fact, what the number of students who actually showed up this year is 4,471. So what's that actual difference look like from 14 to 15? It's really 13 students different than the projection, but 49 students different from 14 to 15. So really what's going on is we've actually picked up a few more students than we projected, and if you look at where that happened, you can see really it's at the elementary school level. So we went from 300 to a projection of 305 to an actual of 318 in terms of the projection. So we missed by 18 students, if you will. The projection undercounted by 13, so by 18 rather, so a total miss of 13. The high school and middle school were relatively more consistent. So in all, those are not huge differences. I mean, we point them out, but we probably shouldn't dance on them too long because it seems that our enrollment projections fairly accurate. And in fact, that's borne out. Less so at the elementary school. So we also look at this every year at this time. I went back 5 years ago, and 5 years ago we do every year a 5-year projection. So if you take that projection from this evening 5 years ago, what did it say about today? And at the K-5 level, it said right now we would have K-5 1,977. Right now we have 1,906. That's about 96% accurate. Much more accurate at the 6-8 and fairly accurate at the 9-12. And the sense of that, if you look at our data in the more comprehensive package that you have, the elementary is always the hardest to project anyway. But we have seen increased enrollments at moving in at the kindergarten, first, second grade levels over the course of the last couple of years. Rather than our enrollment decreasing as we moved into this year, it bumped up slightly. And if you look at the entire package, it looks like that's anticipated to continue. So what does 16-17 look like for us as we go forward? Last year, rather than declining slightly, we grew by 0.8%. So that difference from 4,422 in 14-15 to the 45, almost 4,500 kids, I should say, in 15-16, an 0.8% increase. Where are they at? Really at the elementary school, 3.7% increase in that time. 6-8, Winton already mentioned in the German conversation, the incoming 6th grade class is really small. And you can see that in the numbers. It's much smaller. That's the class that's been trickling through. We had 1 year of unusually small enrollment, and this is the first year that it hits the middle school. So you see that there, and Bay Trail are in the high school, sort of continuing a fairly steady path. For next year, we're projecting a slight increase in overall enrollment, an increase of about 1%, let's call it, K-5. I've included in this projection, and this will be new, so I've included in this projection a little bit of additional enrollment to account for the Windsor Ridge subdivision. It's difficult to know how fast that'll come on. And it's also difficult to know, this whole model is built on history, on a historical average of births in Monroe County, our share of those, and that gets turned into ratios, and those ratios depend really on history, and we've had developments in our past history. So when you start to fiddle around with that, it's a little bit difficult to know what's unique and what would have been accommodated by the normal ratios in the model anyway. I think it's fair to include a little bit extra for Windsor Ridge because we haven't seen that kind of development popping up necessarily in the last few years, while we have had some. The consequences at this point, I think, are the other reason that it's important to include a little bit, because at this point we don't the elementary schools are more crowded. Our class sizes are higher. We have less capacity to accommodate a miss. So in terms of planning at the elementary school, we thought it important to include just a little bit that we can revisit every year. We'll continue our process and revisit it every year, but we want to make sure we capture any of those little bumps at the elementary levels particularly and keep them on the radar screen so that we don't miss in our planning something that could be significant. So this is what we look like. I think it's fair to say at this point we've pretty much flattened out. Our enrollment projection shows us growing over the course of the next 2 years by about 1%, 1.2%, I think, I'm sorry, over the next 5 years. So we seem to have flattened out and begun a trend upward over the course of the next few years. You have lots of other additional information. This is sort of a summary of that. Are there any particular questions that I could address?
Board members, any questions? Mark, and so if indeed if it was 1.5% over the next 5 years, if we were at 2.5%, that would be a considerable amount of stress.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Particularly because of where enrollment tends to come. And we've had this conversation around the most recently, the Windsor Ridge development, depending on the kind of housing that's built, obviously. But if it's housing that's built that accommodates new families, families don't get kids in middle school and then decide to move, typically. They do if they're moving to the area new from far away, but you don't move from across town based on middle school. You make those decisions most typically when your students are getting ready to enter elementary school. And so it's the elementary capacity that's at stress right now. And so if we miss by 1%, chances are that 1% is going to be an elementary miss, and we'll be dealing with that. So that
could be
will
about be a stress. 100 kids or
Right.
so, which
Right.
is enormous. Okay, thank you.
Okay, that moves us then into budget planning, goals, assumptions, and guidelines. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we went over it very thoroughly last time. So I eliminated a lot of the slides that we talked about last time, but I did want to call out the changes that have occurred since last time. Unchanged, obviously, are the goals around academic achievement and excellence, partnerships, and fiscal responsibility. Those are important. They guide our work instructionally and in the financial program that supports that instructional program. So we always are going to keep those in the forefront. But we wanted to call out, I think this has been unsaid, but we wanted to make explicit this idea that our planning has to be long range, that if we're going to plan and be prudent about our financial planning, we can't do it in 2 week or even certainly in 1 year increments. We really have to have our eye to the future. So we added at the board's suggestion those words to that particular goal. It now says long-range financial planning. This isn't new, but there's new updated information. So we have 1 more month's worth of information on inflation, and the inflation rate for the last month was 0. So it's bounced up and bounced down. It's been up 0.1%, down 0.1%. At this point, we're running out of time for it to be anywhere near 2%. That's certainly not going to happen. Probably at or near 0.2 of a 1% for the overall inflation rate, turning into, for us, about 0.9, maybe about 1% of allowable levy growth, depending on what happens with growth in the community. Again, that's going to be very consequential for us, simply because that 0.3 of 1% will turn into some much less than 2 tax levy cap. And you saw today, I think, school boards or the Association of School Business Officials, can't remember which group, has been doing, I think school boards has been doing some survey work around schools around the state, and that conversation that we first had a couple of weeks ago is starting to percolate up, where districts, I think for the first time across the state, are really going to be considering en masse this year attempted overrides around that cap, simply by necessity. So we'll have to track that as it unfolds. That's going to depend on what happens with state aid. Dr. Putnam mentioned the meeting that he had with legislative leadership. There seems to be some will in the Senate to address gap elimination adjustment. That's because gap elimination adjustment really hits the constituency of the Senate. Not so true in the Assembly, where many of their members really would benefit more from changes in foundation aid. So this is always a deal. We'll see how this year's deal works out. But I think there is some will, and there was movement last year around gap elimination adjustment. I think we can expect they'll, if it's not entirely eliminated, I do think they'll take another substantive swing at it this year. They're all up for re-election. This is an election year for everyone, and that usually matters. Yes.
Mark, can you remind us when we generally get an indication of how that'll affect us in the
Sure.
budget cycle?
Governor's budget, it has to be released by April, has to be adopted by April 1st. So it's released with his State of the State, somewhat subsequent to his State of the State address, which will be in January. I'm trying to think. I think it's the second or third week in January, so sometime after that.
So that's where we
Shortly
have a
after
sense of
that.
how much that's going to affect what we have to do for a levy.
Right, exactly.
Thank you.
Since our last meeting, I mentioned the TRS rates had decreased slightly. That was true at the last meeting. ERAs rather had been released by the last meeting. As of today, they've released TRS rates, and they're anticipated to fall as well. So they're currently 13.26% of salary, and they will fall. They give a range. They won't settle on a final amount for some time yet, but it'll be between 13.5% and 12%. So both those pieces are good news for us. I think those rates have driven lots of and significant budget increases over the last several years, so there seems to be some moderation of that. So that'll be helpful in a very tight budget year. Health insurance continues its inexorable march upwards in terms of cost, so that'll certainly continue. Just to follow up on this, as in terms of budget, you've already had conversation about the 15 student language around secondary classes. We'll continue to process staffing changes as we move throughout the budget. And really emphasize, to go back to that first slide, we really have adopted over the course of many years a 5-year planning focus. For us, that's our long-range look, and we're going to continue that. We need in this year to also include some additional, this will be a very consequential year for us around reserve and budget planning. There's lots on the horizon in terms of potential changes for capital work. There's language in your goals around elementary class size, the building condition surveys in process. We know there's sort of rumors and discussion of significant new development in the community. We're going to need to monitor that. All that is going to be part and parcel of the conversation around reserves, capital reserves. We also need to address some of the concerns of the comptroller's audit. So targets for budget variances, balances in insurance and retirement contribution reserves. You'll remember, they recommend we examine those two particular reserves and use of that debt service fund reserve, again, which will also, I would recommend, be part of that long-range plan and strategic planning around future capital work. So there's a lot of work there that I think we'll be touching on multiple times throughout this throughout this budget process as we go forward. So that's sort of a summary of a lot of work that we'll be undertaking over the course of the next several months. But again, the board knows this. I think our community does well as well, but it's worth reemphasizing that this really then is all about balance. So we have instructional needs in the district. Our students have needs. We need to maintain our programs and facilities and also minimize the impact on taxpayers. It's working our way through a process with the board's guidance that makes sense for all of those factors that makes for a successful budget. So we've had great support from our community over the past several years, many years, and we want to maintain that trust. So that balance is what that's all about. We'll want to continue that in this year as well. So are there any questions? Is there anything else I can address? The next upcoming board meeting will be tax cap update and building condition survey, as I said, and then we'll swing in with the rest of the budget presentations throughout the next several months. We will be done by May 17th. So May 3rd is the budget hearing. That's the last formal presentation of the budget. The vote this year on May 17th. So here we go. And so are there any questions? Because tonight's an important night as we set the tone for the rest of that with the budget goals.
Board members, any questions? I think it's important, too, that as we watch the legislature this year, more than ever, the governor's proposal, et cetera, I think, as you indicated, the election year tends to make strange things happen in Albany, and sometimes good, sometimes not so good. So, and as a group, some of us will be going up to Albany on December 7th, I know, as part of the Monroe County School Boards Association, to talk to staff of the legislators, and they're a very important part because they read the legislation and they inform their senators and assemblymen in regard to the legislation. So we'll be up there for a day, and maybe we'll have some indication, as we did last year. We get some guesses on education aid from the staff members, so maybe we'll have something for December 8th. So thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay, we're under board business, policy review, policies for a second reading and approval. Did we have any comments on any of the policies? Okay. From citizens. So we have 7211, provision of interpreter services for parents who are hearing impaired. 8250, animals in the school for instruction purposes, and 8280, instruction for English language learners. If I could have a motion, a second, that the policies, as I mentioned above, be approved and presented on November 3rd, 2015 to us, be approved. Questions? All those in favor? Approved, thank you. We just heard some great assumptions in regard to guidelines, and Mark, I know it's unusual for you to be off by a number more than 3 or 4 every year, so I think it's just a factor that the schools are a magnet for population, and statistically, people do move where schools are, and it does take a period of time for the word to grow. So 5-year projections are excellent, and I think you're right about the elementary piece because, as we have all seen in our neighborhoods, younger families coming in. So again, it's great for us, and it's something we have to work on as a result of it. So if we could have a motion and a second that the board approve the 2016-17 budget goals, assumptions, and guidelines presented tonight and at the November 3rd meeting.
So, second.
Okay? Questions? All those in favor? Thank you. Under President's remarks, I did want to again mention, let Marcia know if you're going to be on the Albany trip December 7th. Our next trip, and those of you on the Legislative Committee will know more next week, but our March trip may be changed to February to coincide with the New York State School Boards Association legislative meetings. So the leadership of the Monroe County School Boards Association is looking to the Legislative Committee to make that recommendation. And that would mean going earlier than March. I think it was February 22nd or so, which the way things have happened in Albany the last few years, by March 20th, things are done with the efficiency that's gone on in retrospect. So we'll know more about that. One other item I wanted to mention, I know Barb mentioned this to me and it was mentioned elsewhere, but Channel 12 and Channel 15 are no longer live. And I ask this because when you live in the Brighton side of the district, those 20% of us, we don't get that station from Penfield. We get the Brighton Town Board and the Brighton School District. So I get to see the best of Brighton. But apparently that has happened, and we received word that the equipment was outdated and there wasn't, the town board wasn't really going to buy that equipment again, and they were exploring opportunities with Fairport and possibly some others. And for us, it's a matter of transparency. We want to make sure, because we're telecast on there besides our website and streaming, but it's important for us to be visible with our budget process, as we've talked about. So this is important to us. And I did have a conversation with a board member, town board member in Penfield, and he indicated it wasn't a debt issue, but they're putting their information on YouTube, which, in my opinion, only limits the number of people who can see things versus on Channel 12 or Channel 15. So I reached out yesterday to Bill Maley, the town supervisor in Brighton, just to look for ideas and alternatives. And unfortunately, these units are so unlinked that you can't do much, because I said, at the very worst, could we see anything? And unfortunately, these systems just don't work well together. So, and he had said last year there was a possibility that everybody would kind of work together on this, but it just hasn't happened. So I think it's unfortunate. I think we can try to have some conversations again with the town to see what happens. I know it's not in their budget, but it's a concern I think we have as a board that all of our information, our budget information, is not out there as much as it could be, because unlike the town, our constituents vote on our budget. So I just mentioned that it's important, and we'll try and see if we can have some other ways to get our message out there.
John?
Yes.
Would it be possible to send a message to the community to say that we've been made aware of this and we're trying to find a solution? Meanwhile, if you want to watch a board meeting, go to our website, do this, do that. This is independent of us?
I think we can, and I don't know if we'd be able to be a part of the solution because it's their franchise in a sense, because they have the agreement with cable. But I think any communication we can do is good, and I think it'd be great if, basically if residents of Penfield let their town board know or let us know, because again, our goal is to be transparent and get information out there. And this is, to me, and I know it's to the staff too, and Dr. Putnam and I and Dr. Sansucci talked, it's really important. So I think anything we can do.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. We're stepping
We,
in
just so
there.
the board knows too, as a reminder, and then to the community here in the audience and who hopefully click on and watch it on our webpage, we did send a letter to Tony LaFountain, town supervisor, and I did speak with him first, just really on behalf of the district and the board I won't repeat everything John said, but for those reasons, primarily transparency and getting information out to our constituents.
And I think from my perspective, what we lose, certainly we've added lots of opportunities for people to see throughout the years. You can, we live stream our board meetings. That makes it available internationally, I suppose. You can click on and view it. But I think what we really lose without Channel 12 is the accidental information, the person who wanders downstairs in the middle of the night to have a glass of warm milk and turns on the TV and watches us. I think that's more important than we understand. And I personally would hate to see that go away. I just think that I know in my experience through the years, I get approached and more than I would ever really have believed possible by people who say, I saw that on TV, what about the thing? So that, I don't have much statistical information to back up my belief, but that belief is pretty strong that we got a lot of mileage out of that. It was valuable communication for us, and I would regret to see it go away.
And Barb, yes.
It's not only Penfield Central School District that was on Channel 12 and 15, it's also the Penfield residents who belong to the Webster School District. Those meetings were also streamed. And so what needs to be out there is that all of Penfield town needs to be aware of that, the community members. And I know that the Penfield Central, or the Webster Central School people are probably not watching this meeting, but I'm sure that the Webster schools has also been made aware of that. At least I hope they are.
No, they have, as well as John referenced, and what the town board has said is that they are looking at having a sort of as a money saver, a conglomerate of districts, Arundequoit, Webster, Penfield, potentially Brighton, sort of banding together, but that hasn't gone anywhere. So.
And I mean, it also, like the high school, the morning announcements used to be on it. Harris Hill used to be on it.
Right.
I mean, there were opportunities. The Suzuki concerts were always on. I mean, it just truly was a community partnership.
Right.
Catherine?
You're not going to like this, Tom. I'm thinking about the new website, where we are taking that big block of the streaming of and we're putting it under a tab, and it's not going to be on the front page. You know, I think we kind of made that decision based on that backdoor knowledge that we're on TV. You know, when we do that, that's going to make it harder to find. It just a little harder, but harder to notice where we are if people do want to sit and watch it.
I think, so next board meeting, I'll be unveiling the new website design that we've been working on through the communications committee and Nancy Bradstreet. I brought it to a group of parents through PAB and students through student council at the high school, and got a lot of positive feedback. But what we also know is we are able to see how many people click to watch, and if don't quote me on the number, but I think it's 3. So we don't have a lot beginning there, but we can.
Now it's going to be their only avenue.
It's just
What?
well.
Oh, here's him.
Well, what we can do, and I think it's a conversation that I'll bring back to senior cabinet, is there's ways that we can, we now have,
more
as of
obvious.
this morning, we have 1,100 Facebook followers, and so we can, if we put that information out, we can get people there, we can communicate where it is. I do think it's a changing of time. I just think maybe it's a little too soon. You can pick up the paper or Google it. The number of people who are leaving. I no longer get Channel 12 because I won't give the name of the company that I go with, but it's not Time Warner, so I don't get Channel 12. So it's really through the cable access. More and more people are heading with the smart television and satellite television, and so I do believe that sort of the avenue of watching public television is going away. I agree with Mark though. Sansucci, that it's not there yet. You still get the accidental clickers, and you do get people I tend to find who maybe aren't connected to the school in the sense of their kids have already graduated or they don't have children, but here's an opportunity. I was a fan of watching, not me, because I'm at these meetings now, but I was a fan of watching the town board meetings as well to stay up to date. And as much as I am relatively digital at my house, I don't I don't go to the YouTube channel to watch it, because it does involve me opening up my computer and sitting down, and I just want to use the clicker. So I think that's something that we do have to look at. Some very interesting ideas came up that I'll bring back to senior cabinet and bring back to the board in regards to information out to our community,
Okay.
and information out back to the town board. And I do want to say too, because I think it's very important, and although we probably don't have many people watching us because we're not on Channel 12, I have and will continue to have these conversations with Tony LaFountain, who is very supportive of Channel 12. So it is, but he's one of a board, and so it's a conversation they're continuing to look at. But he's been open. When I sent the letter, I called him first. I'm never gonna try to blindside another person who runs for office. So we've been having these conversations. He's aware of it, but I don't think it's moving as fast as we'd like to see it move. So it does impact us.
Yeah, and I had called the town board member, before I reached out, and again, I think I received the same message. And but anyways, just wanted to bring that up, and I did find out from an expert, though, that cable company penetration rate is still in the high 70%.
Oh, yeah.
So it's still somewhat viable. And Mark, the other comment too, when I talked to Bill Maley, now if you don't know Bill, the town supervisor of Brighton, he's 6'6", and he said one of the amazing things about being on TV, when he went around door to door this past fall, people said to him, "You don't look that big on TV." And that's how he knew people were watching him. And you really wouldn't know, because he sits in a chair and he doesn't stand up. So there is still some life to this, so we'll see what else we can do.
I don't gain any height on television, though. my little Irish stance over here.
All right, our unfinished business, we have our board strategic plan, goals and objectives. Does anyone have anything to add in regard to progress or reports in regard to the plan? And again, I would encourage everyone to pull your groups together, the task groups, and head towards those objectives. And as usual, we will talk about this once a month, because these are the board's plans. This is something we own, and we all think they're really pretty good. So,
Just for the members of the Board Advocacy Committee, as of this morning, I have parent representatives from each of the 3 school levels, and representatives from the secondary and elementary administrative union and the elementary, middle, and high school teachers union. And so that sort of held us up, starting a new committee and trying to get people on board. As you all know, is sometimes difficult. We do have a group, and tomorrow, if not tomorrow, the following day, there will be an email to all of those individuals, as well as the board members on the advocacy committee, with some dates for our meeting, and we hope to meet in December, so we can get things rolling.
and I think the timing's good, because again, the legislature won't be back until January 10th or so. So I think the more we can gear up, the better. Okay. Any other business to come before the group? If I could have a motion to adjourn at 8:50 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Meeting adjourned.